Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhidamastuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is an occasion of the loss of beloved father of our Prabodh Bhai. He has requested that we should say something about the importance of self-knowledge in coping with grief. But the grief that you feel because of the loss of a loved one is at the emotional level, and therefore merely knowing, unless the knowledge also has been assimilated at that level. Lord Krishna says, Ajo nitya shashvatoyam purana Veda vinashanam nityam yenam ajamavyam. Who knows this one, the self, ajam, unborn, nityam, undying, eternal. There is no question of sorrow. True. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. What is death? It's nothing but giving one garment and taking another garment. So yes, this is all right. That in fact, who am I? I am also the one who is untouched by any sorrow, happiness or unhappiness. Because I am the illuminator of sorrow, illuminator of happiness. If sorrow takes place, which does take place, the self-knowledge can be brought into operation in this way. I remind myself, hey Prabodha, we are experiencing grief, we are experiencing sorrow. That means grief or sorrow is the object of experience. That shows that you are not grief, you are not sorrow, meaning that you cannot be grieving if you know that grief doesn't belong to you. Understand that grief is not a problem. Loss is not a problem. When I connect myself with that loss, then this conclusion, I have lost something. That is when, naturally, a sense of loss creates a grief. So, bringing self-knowledge into operation is that this is my superimposition conclusion that I have lost something. Yes, there is a loss, there is a departure, no doubt about that. But that departure or loss has anything to do with me is the result of my looking upon myself as son, as related, and it is the son who is grieving. The one is related who is grieving. So I asked myself, who is grieving? The son is grieving. Who is lost? The son has lost. As long as I look upon myself as son, there is no way of becoming free from grief. Then we have to let the grief be there. That for a son, grief is natural, for a good son that you are and you were. A loving son who loved his father, served his father, and you declare he was like my friend. The grief or sorrow is natural for a son. We should not deny that. I should not say that I am a son and still I am not grieving. That would be wrong. There should not be denial. As son, as you're grieving, it is genuine. And therefore, accept that and process that. Let it be there. Go through it. In course of time, the impact of it will be reduced. And you can engage yourself in activities which can in a way compensate this loss. If you can create a gain for somebody, there are old people, there are fathers. If you can see father in someone else by associating with them, old people's home, many people are there who want son and who are isolated, lonely. If you can become a son to somebody, that son will feel the sense of nourishment. So the son has to be made free from grief, not Atma. If I knew that I am not son, he was not my father, then of course there is no question of grief. The fact that I am grieving means that I look upon myself as son, and it is natural. Yes, you can bring in this viveka, that son is an identification, and therefore grief belongs to son. I am not son. Son is a costume, is a vesha. I am the one who is putting on that vesha. If this helps you, certainly do that. But you find that it doesn't help you, in that case, let it be. Let grief be. And then, as I said, if possible, try to become son to somebody who is seeking to be father, who is seeking to be loved by a son. If that is possible, then if you can do that, then slowly the son who is now suffering from a sense of great loss will slowly discover some nourishment. Again, the father comes back. Again I become a son who was like before, who loves his father, who serves his father. So then, the most effective way of dealing with the grief is that son is grieving and you become a son like you were before to your father, become son like to someone who is your father, like my father. And then slowly the grief will really go away. So number one, if you can create distance between yourself and son, then you realize that grief belongs to son. The son is my costume. I am not son. And therefore grief doesn't really belong to me. If that helps, do that. Otherwise, experience the grief. Recognize that grief is something natural. And let it be. Go through it. And thirdly, as I said, try to become a son to someone, some needy father. That will be really the answer or solution to your grief. So may the Lord help you in every way so that you can process this grief and progressively become free from that. Hari Om.
Om Triambakaya Jamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshi Amamritaat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. My heart goes out to you, Prabodh, and to your family at this difficult time, having just recently lost your father. I do fondly remember him from a visit to your home. I'm sure he'll be missed by all. And I'd like to thank you, Prabodh and Lavanya, for the invitation to say a few words regarding the importance of self-knowledge and coping with sorrow during difficult times. The first teaching that Sri Krishna gives to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, verse 11, is Ashochanan Vashochastum Prajnavadamshtabhashase Gatasun Agatasumscha Na Anushochanti Panditaha. It says that there's no reason to grieve for those who have departed. You're grieving for no reason. But this verse can be misinterpreted to mean that grieving is somehow not proper, or not natural, or not becoming of a spiritual person. But Sri Krishna is talking about grieving for those who are gone. Why should we grieve for those who are gone? There's no reason for us to grieve for their sake. Because Sri Krishna goes on to say, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinhati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. The Shastra reassures us that the individual continues on their journey when the body is dropped. And it's akin to changing clothes. Just as we abandon old clothes and take up new ones, so too the transmigrating individual leaves one body and takes on another in time. So with our Shraddha, with our trust in the Shastra, the trust in the scriptures, we are assured that the one who has left us is actually fine. They're gone. They're on their way to other adventures, but they are perfectly fine. So why are we sad when someone departs? In actuality, we don't grieve for the departed, we grieve for ourselves. We grieve for our loss. We grieve because the one who was so dear to us will no longer be available to us, except in our hearts and our memories. It's important, I think, to recognize that grief is natural. There's no shame in grieving. Grief is a natural healing process, and it has its own wisdom. And that process needs to be acknowledged and honored and respected. That the sorrow we feel when someone goes should not be denied or suppressed. We even see animals grieve when their person dies, right? It's universal, and it's part of being human, part of being an incarnated individual to feel a loss when a beloved one departs. Right? We're incarnated beings, and we live in relation to other people to whom we grow close and to whom we come to know and to deeply love. Some say that we need to give ourselves time to allow ourselves to process our grief. This is not untrue, but in truth, we don't process grief. Grief processes us. It comes unbidden, right? And we want to give this process some time to complete. Grief has its own wisdom and time frame to heal the human heart. It's not an easy journey, but it's one that we should have a proper perspective on. For those who have an intimate insight into Atma Swarupa, the true nature of oneself as taught by the Shastra, this insight informs the grieving process and allows the process to take its course with fewer pratibandhas, with fewer unnecessary obstructions, so that our heart might heal. One who has some insight, whose clear understanding is informed by the teachings of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and the teachings of the Shastra. One who has this insight understands that their relationship with their heart and their mind. The one advice my guru, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, would give to the serious spiritual aspirants is this: one need not judge oneself by the obtaining condition of the heart or the mind. This is accessible. This perspective is accessible to a person of wisdom who has a clear and healthy perspective on the operations of the heart and the mind. Spiritual seekers, Vedantins, are realists. We want to acknowledge facts and work with them and accept what presents itself to us. And so a spiritual aspirant or one of wisdom have a depth of vision that allows them to see that the passing emotions do not define them. And therefore their hearts are large enough to accommodate even the strong feelings such as sorrow and grief. And so they understand that in truth there is no reason to push away grief or to cling on to grief. Right? We don't invite sorrow into our lives. It's not an act of will. It comes unbidden. And so how do we work with these strong emotions? If one has Athyatma, has self-knowledge, if one has a clear understanding of one's true nature, then one can be gentle with oneself. One can acknowledge and hold even difficult emotions gently. Like a butterfly that's landed on the palm of the hand, right? Neither pushing it away nor grasping or clinging, but allowing it to come, abide, and go, allowing these feelings of sorrow to come as they will, and to stay as long as they need to stay, and then to be free enough to let them go, right? According to its own timetable. Sorrow has its own wisdom, and we must be patient with it. Moreover, a Jivan Mukta, an enlightened soul, recognizes the fact that Jayate Mriyate va kadachita nayam bhutva bhavatava nabhuyaha. In fact, in truth, the self is never born, and therefore is never subject to death. But when we are going through the process of grief, missing our loved ones, it's important to keep in mind and to nurture self-compassion, right? We're grieving for ourselves and for others who love the departed. We're grieving for our loss. And for some time, their absence will undoubtedly be ever present. And for this sense of loss, having self-compassion and practicing self-nurturing is a balm to the heart. Another attitude that is helpful to nourish at these times is gratitude. Remembering the beauty of the person who's passed, expressing a heartfelt gratitude for having had that person in your life. And as a karma yogi, one who is engaged in the world and is a spiritually minded person, one recognizes that, in fact, everything is grace. Seeing that everything is touched in some way by the sacred, even these challenging times, even when a loved one arrives at the final page of the story of their lives. It was grace that we had them in our lives. And even their departure is in tune with the Lord. And approaching life with a prayerful attitude, offering a prayer for understanding and acceptance, provides comfort. So please understand, I don't say this lightly. The Shastra tells us that your departed one is fine. It is those of us who are here who need to be comforted. And so we want to understand and acknowledge that grief is natural. And we want to be free and brave enough to acknowledge our sorrow and to comfort and reach out to one another, to honor this healing process, to have compassion for ourselves and others, and to have self-forgiveness for acts of commission or omission we may feel we might have committed. And we want to tend to expressing gratitude for the time we did have our loved one in our lives. And recognize the punya, the grace that brought us together in the first place. And recognizing that even their departure was in tune with the nature of things, in tune with the sacred. My heart is with you today. And I believe you were quite blessed to have a man with the caliber of character as your father. I'm sure your whole family has been blessed by him. Om Tat Sat.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Mr. Prabodh Bhai lost his father, Mr. Pratap Bhai, Akka Mota Bhai, on Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020. He lived a long and exemplary life, and besides being a great father of Prabodh Bhai, well, he happened to be his best friend and a mentor. Of course, I did not have any opportunity to meet him in person or otherwise. Prabodh Bhai wanted to hold his prayer service in a somewhat non-traditional way, because Prabodh Bhai has a mission of spreading Vedantic knowledge to as many friends and family members as possible by holding mini retreats at his home or assisting Swamis and Swaminis in arranging outreach programs in various places. And so, on this occasion, he has chosen a topic of importance of self-knowledge in coping with sorrow during difficult times, especially losing the dear ones. So, what is sorrow? Sorrow refers to any complaint, any uneasiness about me, centered on the self, is called sorrow. Physical pain is not sorrow, but complaining about such pain is called sorrow. This self-centered sorrow, called shokaha in Bhagavad Gita, etc., is purely the brood of ignorance, wrong thinking, stemming from wrong notions about oneself and the world. And so Vedanta addresses this problem and gives a right understanding about the self. And definitely that right understanding involves that the self, that you, is not subject to birth and death. And therefore, if you are grieving for someone that he is dead now, you should not grieve, because the self is not subject to death, etc. And the best thing in Vedanta, of course, is the Bhagavad Gita itself, where Bhagavan began teaching to Arjuna, Ashocyan Vashocastam. You grieve for something, O Arjuna, who are not to be grieved for. So he uses word Ashocyan. He began, in fact, teaching in the second chapter, 11th verse. So Ashocyan. Shochya means which deserves grief. Ashocya, which does not deserve grief. And so, if you analyze the occasions for which deserve grief, you find thousands. But in the society we have universally accepted that certain events are matter of sorrow and others are not, matter of sorrow. For example, when someone is about to be married, we do not send condolence. Marriage is a matter of joy and laughter, not for sorrow. But for the death, on the other hand, even when there is a relief involved, because the person was suffering extreme pain, like an example of a Prabodhbhai's father himself. So the person was suffering extreme pain and required constant care. And and still such a person, when he passes, when his death occurs, there is a tinge of sadness when someone becomes dead or when a person is dead. So death is basically something which is an event of a sorrow universally. Then there are cultural events also which can bring sorrow, etc. That we are not going into that, because the occasion is of a death, and death is something which is an event of a sorrow universally. But even though universally that's an event of a sorrow which deserves grief, death, Bhagavan says totally opposite thing. He says whatever may be the situation, a situation of death or even a less grim situation, in a human life there is no legitimate reason for grief. Very beautiful. There is no legitimate reason for grief. That is called moksha. Moksha means a freedom from grief. So one lives a life but one doesn't have a grief. And then it's a wonderful thing. That's the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, teaching of Vedanta in general. And a situation that does not cause sorrow is called ashocya. The situation which deserves sorrow is, we call it shocya. Bhagavan says ashocya. There is nothing. In fact, the people for whom you are grieving, I mean this Drona and Bhishma and other people or other relatives who are standing in front of Arjuna in Mahabharata war, he says even if they die, dear ones, still your Keith and Keens, and I mean all close relatives, but still, one should not grieve because they don't deserve grief. And that's a teaching Bhagavan unfolds and giving teaching about the nature of a self which is free from death, birth and death, everything. So Bhagavan told Arjuna that he had picked up a sorrow where it was not warranted at all, and the people of knowledge and the self-knowledge, do not entertain any grief. Panditaha na anushocanti. He says in that verse itself, verse number 11 in chapter 2. So a Pandita is one, or a wise person is one who has self-knowledge, who knows oneself as Sachidananda and which is not subject to death, etc. So then what is the cause of a sorrow? Because sorrow is there. So there can be only two sources. In the world we divide like this. One is myself and the other is other than myself. Only two things are. In Sanskritam they call Atma and Anatma. Atma means the self, means I. And the Anatma means other than I. So the world, etc. Non-self. So either of that, when I'm experiencing a sorrow, means either of this will be the source. There are only two things, self and non-self, I and the world. So either of that will be the source of the sorrow. And if Atma is a source of a sorrow, if I am a source of a sorrow, then there is no problem at all. Because you will always be sad, because I am a source of sorrow, so I will be always sad. Then sadness is my nature, it seems. And in fact, when you are sad, you will be happy because that's your nature. And so to be sad is my nature, then I will be happy being sad. Because what is natural to me cannot be the source of complaint, cannot be the source of sorrow. There is no complaint, we don't have a complaint that fire is hot. In fact, definitely, there is no cause also for fire to be hot. And there is no complaint on the part of the fire to be hot. Even we don't have a complaint. Fire will not have a complaint, that's because you feel it is inert. But you don't have a complaint that fire is hot. So, if sorrow is my own nature, then we have no cause for sorrow at all. So, we should be happy being, happy being sorrowful, if Atma is a source of sorrow. And then sadness is not a problem, but sadness is a problem. In fact, I am trying to find the cause of a sorrow, why I am sad, right? And therefore, definitely it has come to you. And with certain means, you remove that sorrow also. Again it comes, right? And therefore, that shows that sadness is not my nature. Sadness, I am not the source of a sadness. That's the first thing. Out of two things, Atma and Anatma, self and non-self, I and the world, I am not the source of sorrow. Then what is the source of sorrow? World is the source of sorrow. Then if world is the source of sorrow, then whenever you come in contact with the world, you should feel sorrowful. That is not the case. Same world gives you a lot of joy also. And so, so what is this? Two things are there. I and the world. I am not a source of sorrow. World is not a source of sorrow. Then how this sorrow is there? So definitely, whether Atma is a source of sorrow or Anatma is a source of sorrow, I am a source of sorrow or world is a source of sorrow, well, we have to analyze properly. And this analysis is the sole subject matter of the Vedanta, and it reveals what the Atma is and enabling one to become free from the sorrow. There is no reason for to be sorrowful. Either it is an universal event called death, or even less serious situation in the world, in the life, which no situation can cause you sorrow. And that has to be revealed properly, it has to be taught properly, and Bhagavan is teaching that to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere in Vedanta, in Upanishads, etc. The nature of self has been revealed, well, by which one becomes free from the sorrow. Hari
Om. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. It is quite normal and natural to feel a sense of deep loss and bereavement on the death of a loved one. Whenever life ends, an association turns into dissociation. One is bound to experience a sudden sense of loss of something valued and cherished. The loss of one's parents is one such occasion which triggers such emotions. Shri Prabodhbhai Parekh has recently lost his father, who was fondly referred to as Mota Bhai. I too have had the good fortune of getting associated with Dadaji briefly on several occasions on my lecture tours to the US. Of what I know of Dadaji, he was such a disciplined person who lived his whole life in a manner which would serve as an inspiration to all the family members. On such occasions of bereavement, the wisdom imparted by the Vedic scriptures acts as a soothing redress to our aching hearts. The poet Saint Bhartrhari, in his Vairagya Shatakam, has provided a very beautiful prayer which I would like to share with all of you. In this, he talks about the thoughts of a wise person at the time of death. What will be the thinking pattern? What should be the thinking pattern? Matar medini tata maruta sakhe tejasu bandho jana bratar vyomani baddha eva bhavatam esha pranamanjalihi yushmat sangavashopajata sukruta sfarasfuran nirmala jnanapastat samasta moha mahima liye pare
Brahmani.
He says, Bhartruhari says, that the wise person calls the elements his close relatives and expresses his gratitude towards the elements. O elements, I have been associated with you all because it is you who have gifted me with this body. The good news is that I have put this body to good use. That is, I have made use of this body and have attained knowledge of my true self. Having used the body, I want to return it with a note of thanks, with a sense of gratitude. My delusion regarding my true self is completely gone. And now I am ready to become one with Parabrahman. Parabrahmani aham line. How does Bhartruhari address the 5 elements? It's very interesting. O Mother Earth, O Father Air, O Friend Fire, O Relative Water, O Brother Space, I am offering my final namaskaras to all of you. I have been fortunate to attain knowledge because of the punyam of associating with you all. And by the power of knowledge attained, I am now totally freed of delusion. And so I am now ready to merge with the Lord. And therefore I am offering my final pranams. This is the power of self-knowledge. This is the kind of strength that self-knowledge gives an individual, that even bereavement takes the form of joyful exit from the world of limitations and sorrows. I pray to the Lord for the Sadgati of the departed Jiva, and also that Lord grant the maturity and wisdom to the surviving members of the family to accept the inevitable with a sense of gratitude, devotion and Sharanagati. Harihi Om.
In the vision of Sanatan Vedic Dharma, each one of us is a pilgrim. We travel. Travel in terms of becoming. Travel in terms of being. As long as there is an individuality, ahankara, the cycle of birth and death continues. The death is not an end in itself, but it is a beginning of the new birth. Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityuhu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. There is a birth, and that is according to our karmas and sankalpa, as it is mentioned in Kathopanishad by Lord Yama. Yoni manne prapadyante shariratvaye dehina sthanu mannenu sanyati yatha karma yatha shrutam. Our karmas and sankalpas decides next birth. Of these so many births, human birth is special, is a unique. Why it is unique? Because it is this birth when there is a possibility of becoming free from the cycle of birth and death, possibility of becoming free from becoming, life of becoming, journey of becoming. Manushya Janma is meant for moksha, knowledge that one can gain. Therefore, Ishavasya Upanishad says, Iha ched avedi tata satyam asti, na ched iha vedit mahati vinashti. When you know yourself, then there is satyam, the purpose of the human birth is fulfilled. And if you miss this moksha, if you miss this knowledge, mahati vinashti, there is a loss. How is a loss? Missing infinity means the loss is also infinite. Human birth is a very precious birth. If one cannot gain the knowledge, then also if one is on the pursuit of moksha, there is an assurance from the Lord that next janma will be continuing this, next janma will be human birth, and the jiva will continue the pursuit of moksha. Dharma and Purushartha are not natural. We have to discern the problem. And then we have to initiate the solution. That means one has to become a mumukshu or a jignasu. Only if one is a mumukshu or jignasu, then only one pursues moksha. But how to become mumukshu? How to become jignasu? The path is dharma. When one commits to life of dharma, one is led to moksha. Sri Pratap Bhai, our beloved Prabodh Bhai's father, popularly known as Mota Bhai, had lived a life of dharma, had always been committed to his duty, and that too lovingly. So lovingly that he was like a brother, older brother to his own son, Prabodh Bhai, and the family. Because of this, in spite of being in US, he got an opportunity for moksha, get an opportunity to study Shastra. And they were doing satsanga at home. He was regularly attending the classes. And as long as his health permitted, he attended the camps also. So, I am sure Mota Bhai has a urdhva gati. If there are some prarabdha, some sankalpas for bhoga, ichha, some punya prarabdha, he will go to Ashwamedha Yajinam, Prapya Punya Kratal Loka. And then having experienced those pleasures, he will again come back to Manushya Yoni, and all other karmas will be superseded, come to Manushya Yoni and continue his pursuit for moksha. It is really fortunate, it is really blessings for Prabodh Bhai and family to be born as his children. No doubt, missing the father, whatever may be the age and however long the association may be, that feeling, especially a friendly father, that missing the father, feeling of pain, loss will be there. But at the same time, you should feel proud to be born in that family, and you should feel content that he lived the life worthy of living. He lived the life which one should live. And he is on the pursuit of moksha. So, we pray for him. May he soon get the human birth, and may he soon continue the journey of moksha wherever he left. And may he continue giving blessings to Prabodh Bhai, Lavanya Ben and the entire family. And may they also continue, which they are doing, with a more acceleration.
Namaste. Let us have a few words on the importance of self-knowledge in coping with sorrow. Chandogya Upanishad says, Tarati Shokam Atmavit, which means one who has the knowledge of the self crosses over all the grief. Yes, there is no other panacea for coping with grief other than self-knowledge, because it is the ignorance of the true nature of the self which is the root cause of all the sorrow and grief in our life. Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, "Na jayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuyah ajo nitya shashvatoyam puranah na hanyate hanyamane sharire." Lord Krishna, while addressing the problem of grief which occurred at the prospect of losing the near and dear ones in the war for Arjuna, and addressing this problem, Lord Krishna says, "O Arjuna, there is absolutely no birth and death for the self. Self never dies and is never born. This is the reality about the self, and in fact, this is the Paramarthic reality, which means the absolute reality. This is proclaimed all over in our scriptures. Let me quote a very beautiful verse from Mandukya Karika, where Gaudapadacharyaji says, "Etat tad uttamam satyam yatra kinchin na jayate," which means that that is the highest truth where nothing is ever born. There, Gaudapadacharyaji underlines the fact that Jiva is never really born, and one who is never born, where is the question of death for him? This is the reality, the absolute truth about the self. And the beauty is, I am that self. I am the self which is Ajaha, ever unborn, ever free from all the changes. Even if we are not aware of this reality, and if we take the self to be subject to being born and dying, even then, there is no real cause for grief. Why? Because again, as Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, "Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu dhruvam janma mritasya cha." Lord Krishna says that Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu, there is certainly death for the one who is born, and there is again birth for the one who dies, which means that birth and death are the inevitable facts of life. So again, where is the point of grieving when this is the law? This is the law in the empirical reality. Therefore, the Lord Krishna says, "Tasmad apariharyerthe natvam shochitum arhasi." O Arjuna, there is no point in grieving over something which you cannot change. So, even if the self is born, and if it dies, even then, that being the law, that being the undeniable fact, there is no point in grieving over that. So, from both the standpoints, from the standpoint of Paramarthic reality, which means the absolute reality, there is absolutely no reason for grieving. Grief is totally illegitimate because self is never born, and obviously there is no death for the one who is not born. And even from the standpoint of empirical reality, the Vyavaharik reality, even there is no reason to grieve. Why? Because in that reality, birth and death are the undeniable facts as long as ignorance is there. So, grief can arise only when we refuse to accept these realities. Non-acceptance of these realities of life, both the Paramarthic reality and the Vyavaharik reality, results in grief. Then what are we supposed to do? We gracefully accept the decision of Ishvara or Prarabdha and proceed with our journey. Does it mean that we have to become insensitive? No. We don't have to become insensitive. In fact, we love and care for each other, help each other in proceeding with the journey of our life. We help each other understand the true purpose of life. And what is that? The true and the express purpose of life is to know the self as it is. And we have already said that the true nature of the self is Satchidananda. It is existence, consciousness, and happiness. This is the truth. If we can accept this and abide in this, there is absolutely no reason and there is no place for grief in our life. And if we cannot accept this, then we gracefully accept the facts of life.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The greatest loss, the most tragic circumstance is the loss of a dearly beloved family member. At this time, it seems unsympathetic to talk about philosophy, to talk about religion. And yet it is at this time that we are forced to take a philosophical look, a spiritual look at life. Because death is inevitable. It is the one guarantee in life that we shall all die. Swami Vivekananda said that death comes to all. Kings die and paupers die. The learned die and fools die. Death comes to everybody. So we are forced, inevitably, by the death of our close ones, by our own future death, to question what becomes of us. Where is this person who was so beloved to us? What became of that person? Is that person still there in some form? What is the destiny of that person? And finally, what is the point of this entire game of life and death? This is the great question that all the religions of the world try to answer. It's not just Vedanta. Every religion says that death is not the end. Notice that death is the death of the body. Clearly, what dies, what is burned or buried, it is the body. It is the body which falls back into its material constituents. Every religion in the world, without exception, says that the soul of man, our inner self, the core of our being, it survives death. We existed before the birth of this body. We have had many lives. Every Indian philosophy, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, except the materialist Charvakas, all of them had this one common conception of multiple lifetimes. So the Jivatman, the individualized self, it continues from lifetime to lifetime. It is bodies which are born and they die. We are immortal in that sense. And yet that is not the end of the story. One of our monks many years ago in Uttarkashi, so he was debating this question about many lives. He says all Indian religions believe in many lives, punarjanma, and whereas the Middle Eastern religions, Islam and Christianity and Judaism, they believe in one life, not multiple lives, which is correct. Punarjanma hai ya nahi in Hindi, is there multiple lives or not? So he went to a great non-dualistic teacher in the neighborhood in another ashram, and he asked his question. And the non-dualist teacher said, "Arey Mahatma ji, jab janm hi nahi to punarjanm kahega." He said, if where there is not even one birth, there is the question of many births. So pointing to the deepest teaching of Advaita Vedanta. That monk who told me the story, he was very annoyed. It's very difficult to argue with these non-dualists. Everything they will say is Maya, and then they point to Brahman. But that is the final understanding that we have had in our civilization in Advaita Vedanta, that the ultimate reality is one existence in which all this variety of life appears, plays around, and disappears. All these names and forms, bodies and minds and lives and actions and good and bad and joys and sufferings, like a movie on a movie screen, they play for some time and then they disappear. The screen remains. It was there before the movie. It was there during the movie. Without it, no movie is possible. And it disappears when the whole movie is switched off. A new movie starts. The screen is still there. We are turning over the book of life, page after page, but we are constant. So this one existence, which Advaita speaks about, where we are all one, it is not multiple individual beings. Beyond that conception of multiple jivas, there's one existence, Brahman, or also called Sat, pure being. That never is actually born with the birth of the body, which is an appearance. It never dies with the death of the body, another appearance, but it remains as the background, the ground of all appearances and disappearances. So this is what when we prayed at the beginning, when I said, Asato ma sadgamaya, let us go from the movie to the screen, from the appearance to the reality. That reality is our own self. You are that reality. The teaching of Advaita Vedanta is you are not a character in a movie. You are the screen, the reality on which the entire movie of life is being played. That screen, the Sat, Asato ma Sadgamaya. Let us go from the appearance to the reality, from the movie to the screen. How do you do that? So from ignorance to knowledge, from tamas to jyoti, from darkness to light, from not knowing this reality to knowing this reality. How do we do that? The whole of Advaita Vedanta teaching is there to point out this immortal reality within ourselves, our real nature. So we go from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, from not knowing our real nature to knowing our real nature. And then what will be the result of that? The result of that is amazing. You go beyond death. Tameva viditva ati mrityu meti. Knowing our real nature as Sat, as pure being, one transcends death. Mrityur amritam gamaya. Let us go from death to immortality. This is the journey of the human soul. This is all our story is this. The point of life is this, to realize our real nature, to conquer death. I pray to the Lord to bless us all, that we may attain to that knowledge, to that final illumination as soon as possible and transcend this play of life and death. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः। श्रीभगवानुवाच ऊर्ध्वमूलमदः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित् अतश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी निर्मानमोहाजितसङ्गदोषाः अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवृत्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैर्विमुक्ताः सुखदुःखसंज्ञैः गच्छन्त्यमूढाः पदमव्ययं तत् न तद्भासयते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वाप्ति भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मन्यवस्थितं यतन्तोऽप्यकृतात्मानः नैनं पश्यन्त्यचेतसः यदादित्यगतं तेजः जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकं गामाविश्य च भूतानि धारयाम्यहमोजसा पुष्णामि चौषधीः सर्वाः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां देहमाश्रितः प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पचाम्यन्नं चतुर्विधम् सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टः मत्तस्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यः वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहम् द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्त्यव्यय ईश्वरः यस्माक्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रतितः पुरुषोत्तमः यो मामेवमसम्मूढः जानाति पुरुषोत्तमम् स सर्वविद् भजति माम् सर्वभावेन भारत इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नघ एतद्बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे पुरुषोत्तमयोगो नाम पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यः मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः हरिः ओम् Hari Om. Namaste. As Prabodh Bhai said, 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is very important. In our tradition, this chapter and few others, but this chapter is chanted in the form of prayer for the peaceful onward journey of the departed one. 15th chapter is very important because it is by itself a shastra. It is by itself a scripture because it has all the elements of a shastra. It shows the real picture of this life called samsara and how to get out of samsara. Samsara means a life of becoming. Samsara means limitedness. Samsara means ignorance. This chapter shows how to come out of the ignorance, and ignorance not of the world, but ignorance of my true nature. This chapter very beautifully shows what is the true nature of the self. Self means I. It gives me my identity. It very beautifully says that which you are seeking throughout the life and throughout many lives from time beginningless, you are seeking something. But what you are seeking is hidden in you. It is your very self. The seeker himself is the sought. This is what this chapter reveals. At the end of this chapter, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, Etat buddhva buddhiman syat. He says, Iti guhyatamam shastram. He says, O Arjuna, I have told you the most profound secret in this chapter. And that secret is that the Purushottama or Ishvara is none other than you. Ishvara means limitless. Ishvara means infallible. Ishvara means completeness. This is what you are seeking in life. And that is nowhere else but in yourself. It means you are that. This is the most profound secret. And this is what I have told you. Having known this, there remains nothing to be known. Having known this, there remains nothing to be achieved. One becomes satisfied and discovers the true fulfillment in life. Therefore, this chapter is chanted when someone departs. In short, it is in the form of a prayer. And with this, I also offer my salutations and respect and pray for Muktabai.